Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Coffee and Podcast, where specialty coffee means so much more. We are on a quest to cultivate freedom for victims of human trafficking, all while drinking really great coffee. I'm your host, Philip Klayman, and I'm also one of the co-founders of Three Tree Coffee in Statesboro, Georgia. Now, I'm here in Statesboro, and our guest is in Poland, but at least here in South Georgia, the weather's warmer, the flowers are blooming, I probably need to cut the grass again. And you know what that means? It's now cold brew season. And so I'm really excited to have our guest today, who's Maciej Duszak, who is the head of sales and co-owner of HardBeans, which exists to offer businesses practical, efficient, and versatile beverage solutions, specifically in the cold brew coffee space. They have some sub-brands. One is called Hard Tank that's focused on cold brew. I think we're going to be learning a lot more about what they do and how they are serving the coffee community and coffee drinkers. So Maciej, thank you so much for joining us today. And please tell us just a little bit about yourself.
Hello, Philip. Thank you so much for inviting me and for the warm introduction. You've probably told almost everything about myself and our company, so I'll try to fill in and be brief. Like you've said, HardBeans is a company that exists under a few different solutions, one of which is Hard Tank, our cold brew solutions sub-brand, you can call it that way. But the entire company is basically what we call a coffee technology hub, which means that we try to turn research into business solutions. And we started as a small specialty coffee roastery back in 2017. But me and my partners, we have an experience in coffee since early 2000s. And since day one of our operation, we really wanted to focus in R&D field. And in January 2018, we decided to start exploring cold brew. Why cold brew out of all things? Well, maybe because we didn't really like it all that much, and we got a feeling that maybe you can do it better. You know, when you rewind to 2018, the only thing that people knew on making cold brew was a plastic bucket, right? Which hasn't really changed all that much. And we've made a list of issues with traditional cold brew making, such as long extraction time and therefore poor efficiency if you run a coffee shop. If you run out of cold brew for a day, then, what you going to do? You got to wait until tomorrow, right? And then long extraction time causes oxidation, which kills the quality of your product and can possibly, most likely, also damage its shelf life. And then there were plenty more issues with traditional cold brew making, such as hygiene, an example, or consistency. And we've listed all of them, and we've challenged ourselves to maybe reinvent it, sort of. So we started a research project with the University of Technology. And fast forward 2 years later, 2020, we came up with a fast cold extraction technology, which we called Hard Tank, and we patented it. And we decided to start implementing this technology into business solutions, out of which the first was a cold brew maker, a machine to make cold brew in less than 1 hour, which was back then something that didn't really exist on the market. Like I said, when you told cold brew to an average barista, they were thinking, plastic buckets, right, with a cotton or paper filter inside. Whereas we popped out of a sudden with a machine, like espresso machine or a batch brewer, only that to make cold coffee and not only coffee, like we learned along the way. And it wasn't really easy because there was no such a category on the market. People really didn't know anything about us. We were just a bunch of guys in Poland, 100,000 people, little town. So we had to find our path and fight hard way to get a little bit of credibility. But now we sell our equipment to over 80 countries around the world. We have 35 and counting number of distributors. So we took next step in 2022 and decided to scale up this technology to build facility where we make ready to drink cold brew drinks. and we are mostly a co-packer or private label manufacturer, you can call it that way. So we now have those three manufacturing facilities: coffee roasting space, hard tank machine assembly, and ready to drink facility. And there is another technology that we try to implement to the market in nearby future, which is coffee grounds recycling. Because when we produce all those hundreds and thousands of cans each month, we produce quite a lot of coffee grounds, right? And for majority of people, this is just a waste product. But we've developed a technology to recycle those coffee grounds twice. First, to extract chemical compounds out of those grounds for the cosmetic industry, and then what's left, you can recycle once again and use it as a source of sustainable energy to turn it into biofuel, biogas basically, which you can then use to powerize your coffee roaster or your pasteurizer, right? So this is what we do. Long story, not so short, I guess.
Wow. So, and the specialty coffee side, do y'all have coffee shops? Because you do roasting, but it seems like maybe most of the roasting is for your own canning operations and things like that. But do you have coffee shops? Do you roast for, other people besides the cold brew canning?
Well, yes, we do roast for everyone willing to brew our coffee, although we don't have our own coffee shops. But one of my partners used to have a restaurant and a coffee shop where I've been running multiple coffee shops in my previous business life. So we also have plenty of in-field experience, but we don't run any coffee shop ourselves at the moment, at least.
Yeah. And it's hearing your story. What really fascinates me is there is such a passion for innovation. I mean, what started out in one place transformed and then transformed and then and you're even talking about the next transformation. Well, we now have this issue. So let's get creative. Let's really think outside the box to address it. And so, I guess one of my questions is what do you think helps really spark that creativity on your team? Is it some methodology that you all have as business owners? Is there one person on your team that's just the crazy one and he throws out all the ideas and then you're like, well, let's look into that. I mean, how does this creativity and innovation seem to come about so naturally for you and your team?
Well, I haven't really thought about it for some time, but I think what gives us a drive for that innovation is the diversity of our skills and business experience among us, the co-founders. There are eight of us in total, and three of us we come from coffee industry, like in the purest sense. But the rest of my partners they come from IT business, financing business, consulting business. So we do have a lot of creativity, not only towards coffee and technology, but also towards running the business in general. And we try to use the experience of every one of us to solve problems in a creative way and help each other, and thanks to that we do have strengths in almost all fields of the business running, such as finances or problem solving, technology, industry, etc., etc., not just being experts in coffee, right? If it was just me and a few of my good coffee fellas trying to run that business, we would never do what we are doing because we would lack experience in financing, and all that stuff that maybe is not as prominent and cool and interesting, but is essential to run the business. And besides all that, we decided that we really want to do something nice. We really want to do something cool. Every one of us already did either have an existing well prospering business or a very good job at some other company. So we didn't really have to do it. We decided we want to do it, but only on our own terms. And that was also a business decision because when we were starting, back in 2017 as a coffee roaster, we were just one of the few in Poland. There were maybe 10 or 15 other specialty coffee roasters back at the time. So it wasn't really all that difficult for us to make a name, right? And me and my partners, we already were, we knew everyone in the industry locally, so it was easy for us to build the initial base of customers. But 8 years later, there are over 300 specialty coffee roasters in Poland, I think. And how are we going to compete? How are we going to convince a client that we are better than 12 or 15 other guys that have same coffees, same support, similar pricing? They might be even closer because they might operate in the client's city, which we can't do ourselves, right? So not to mention the abroad international expansion. How am I supposed to sell my coffee in Berlin or Copenhagen or London, right? So we decided to take an alternate route. We decided to go beyond coffee roasting. It was a lot of unknown. We had no idea what's going to happen. To be honest, when we came up with our fast extraction technology in the beginning, I knew it's great, but I didn't really believe we're gonna sell those machines around the world. Really, I was like, no, how come, guys? This is insane. No chance we're gonna do it. We're just a bunch of guys from garage. But magically, if it was just me, I would give up. But because of my partners, believing in it, we came through.
I love that vulnerability because I think, a lot of times it's easy to look in from the outside. And when the story is successful, it's like, oh, that looked, I don't want to say easy, but it's like, oh, wow, that's so great, right? It's so, how nice that is. And I've had people maybe come up to me and say, oh, wow, you have your own shops. That must be wonderful. And sometimes in the back of my mind, I'm like, well, I rarely get to sit in my shops and just enjoy the coffee, right? Like I'm always thinking of the problems and the issues and the fires to put out and the steps it took to get there. And so I love the vulnerability of you sharing. Yeah, I didn't know if this would work. We were taking a leap, and because I felt similar when we were starting our business. It's a much smaller scale, but I feel like everyone feels that entrepreneurial leap if you're starting your own thing or if you're expanding into new markets and new products. And so I just appreciate that vulnerability to say, you know what, we didn't know, we weren't sure. There was some anxiety, but what a success story now. So we're going to come back to cold brew. We're going to come back to HardBeans. I actually want to take a step back and I want to get to know you a tiny bit better because you're a very accomplished individual in the coffee world. You've competed, you've won awards. So tell us a little bit more about your individual experience in specialty coffee and competing.
Well, I got fascinated with coffee when I was 15. That was during the summer when I got a summer job in the car wash, and I had to wake up pretty early, and I felt like I'm now an adult. So I'm going to drink coffee 5 a.m. in the morning. Obviously, it was an instant coffee where I started, but then a couple months later, we've had an bean to cup espresso machine at home, and I started to drink that coffee, and I loved it, and I got fascinated. Started to read about it somewhere in the internet. It was like 2000 and 2004, something like that. I mean, like there was no information, no blogs, no videos, no nothing about it. And when I started to study, I studied and graduated law. I realized very quickly after about a week or so that I have plenty of free time. So I found a job in a local chain coffee shop, and I started to work as a barista. Finally pulling my first shots using La Marzocco and Mazer grinder, and I started to dig deeper and deeper into it, and I've learned that there is something such as specialty coffee. And I've tried my first pour over coffee. I've tried my first V60 and Chemex and AeroPress, and then espresso made with something else than second crack beans. And I was just blown away. I started to work in a specialty coffee shop. Then I started to, after some time training all the baristas, I started to do consulting for other coffee shops. And in 2013, I started to compete, which I was doing for 8 years. And within that time, I've been a Brewers Cup, National Brewers Cup champion. I've been a runner-up for like 6 or 7 times. Also competing and finally as a runner-up in Brewers Cup, in Cup Tasters, and coffee and good spirits. So there was plenty of competition. I've did a lot of also homework, being an authorized SEA trainer back at the time. So I've ticked all those education boxes as well. And I also even started my first coffee YouTube channel in Polish in Poland. It was 2013 or something like that. You know, I don't do it anymore because I don't really have time for it now. But those movies still exist, and I very rarely meet some young baristas on the street who tell me, I learned coffee out of your movies. That's really touching. But now I don't work with coffee itself all that much anymore because I run a company that is like 45 people. I do sales processes, CRM, prospecting campaigns, all that kind of adult stuff.
That's right. Well, we'll need to look up those YouTube channels later. They're still out there probably, so I'll have to look those up and
Yeah, the movies
take a
are
peek.
there, but I even look completely different on these movies. Really, it was like ancient times, but I really enjoyed it. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah. And now, do you ever miss the competition scene at all? Now that you're doing maybe some more of the office work, I mean, they both have their different types of excitements, but do you miss the competition scene?
Well, I've been at the back room of the Polish Brewers Cup National Championship a few weeks ago. I was coaching one of the competitors after a few years of my retirement. I liked it. I got excited for a couple of days ahead, but then when I saw all that equipment, when I saw all that stress, when I saw all the hassle, I was like, well, I think I don't miss it anymore. I mean, I was really serious about it. I was really competitive. So when I was competing in my final days, I was taking 3 weeks off my work. I was traveling to the origin to search for the coffee. I was paying it mostly of my own money in the very beginning. So it was everything or nothing. And then if it's everything or nothing, and then you are second, not the first, only because you didn't, cool down one of your espresso cups, and you've lost by 3 points out of 700, you feel like it's a lot of pressure. So I don't miss it, but I think I am now using my competitive spirit in a different category because I started to cycle, and I did my first gravel race a couple weeks ago, and I now see that this is going to be my next big thing when it comes to competing.
Wonderful. So from the coffee competition stage to cycling competition stage, but even then, it seems like that competitive edge even stays in business with your growth because you won lots of individual awards as a barista and in specialty coffee. But your organization and this product has won numerous awards. The hard tank specifically, the SCA Best New Product, and SCA, for those listening who don't know, Specialty Coffee Association. You won Best New Product in 2021, 2022, the World Coffee Innovation Award of 2023, and others. So it seems like that passion for excellence and just pushing the bar even higher is within the organization. So I guess let's turn our attention to the hard tank. This piece of equipment that y'all have created and innovated. The claim is what, 4 liters in 1 hour. You can make 4 liters of cold brew in 1 hour. How do you do it? You don't have to spill all the secret sauce. I'm sure there's some secret trademark or copyright things. What can you share? How do you do it?
Yeah. Well, so first of all, HardTank is a fast cold extraction technology, right? We have a few machines, a few models with different capacities. So the small one is called the baby HardTank, and you can make up to 5 liters of cold brew per batch. But we also have HardTank 20, which allows you to brew 20 liters per batch. So in gallons, it's around 1.2 gallon for baby HardTank and around 5.5 gallon for Harton 20, if I'm not mistaken. And yes, you can brew cold with our technology in less than 1 hour, and you can go way below that. So, an example, if you brew tea, because when we think cold brew in the first place, we think coffee. And after all, it's a coffee podcast, right? But you can make cold brew out of coffee, tea, cascara, herbs, dried fruit, fresh fruit. You can use water for cold brew. You can use spirits for cold brew. So there's much more than just coffee and water. And our machine, our technology allows you to use all of those. So you can make cold brew tea, in example, in less than 15 minutes with HardTank. You can make cold brew out of coffee, depending on your roast color and preference, in as short as 20 to 25 minutes. And the longest it will take you will be probably somewhere around 70 to 80, maybe 90 minutes for a very lightly roasted dense beans. But if you compare it with traditional cold brew making, which is anything from 12 to 24 hours, it's a massive gap. It's a massive difference. And here is the first thing that comes in. It's not the speed for the sake of the speed, it's the speed for the sake of efficiency, right? Because if you're running out of your cold brew, you just start another batch, and no later than an hour, again, you have another batch. That's one thing. But on the contrary, you don't have to brew 5 gallons at a time for a next day. And if you didn't sell it, then you have to throw it away. You can just brew as you go. If there's a bad weather day, it's rainy, it's cold, or there is just no traffic for whatever reason, you just don't brew all that much. You just brew one little 5 liter or 4 liter batch, and that's it. And also, when you brew that fast, you don't oxidize your product. So the quality is better, the clarity of that cold brew is better, the expression of flavors, of acidity, of mouthfeel. This is what strikes most of the people when they first try cold brew made with HardTank. They say like, "Wow, how clean it is!" This is because there is no enough time to oxidize your product when you extract it. And then on top of all that, we extract about 15 to 18% more of caffeine versus traditional cold brew or batch brew. We extract more chlorogenic acid and other antioxidants, and we even extract 4 times more lipids than traditional cold brew making. And lipids is a platform to transform the flavor, to transport the flavor into your cup. So that's also something important to have in mind. And then that amplifies your economical aspects of running your business, because if you have a machine that can brew a batch of cold brew in less than 1 hour, including preparation time and cleaning, then you can build an entire cold brew menu with just one machine that has a footprint of 30 by 30 centimeters, right? Which is like what, 9 inches? Yeah, maybe no, 15 inches, 13 inches by 13 inches on your countertop for the baby HardTank. So it's really compact, and you can brew coffee, tea, cascara, a cocktail, lemonade, whatever you want, all with one machine, instead of having multiple buckets in the back of a coffee shop, right? And yeah, that's the technology in a nutshell. So it gives you a lot of flexibility when you're brewing. That saves you a ton of time, allows you to create more revenue because you can create a whole portfolio of drinks, and it even cleans and sanitizes itself, which is also important because we have to be aware that cold brew means there is no high temperature to kill the microbes, right? So if you don't take necessary precautions, you can just hurt your customers. So we designed this whole method in the most simplified way to minimize the human factor and make it as simple and seamless to be used. So you don't have to manually clean it. You just press one button and it cleans itself, because we know that labor is expensive, and the human factor is the factor that lets us down most of the time. So yeah, this is how we got around HardTank.
Sounds like there's a reason it won so many awards. And what I want to do next is I want to share with you something I've heard. And I'm
Yeah,
not a scientist, and I don't have access to university technologies. Maybe I do. Maybe I should start asking more questions to people I do know. But I've heard this before, because you mentioned something earlier about how cold brew historically is not that good. It's a relatively newer style of brewing and drink, and I agree. When it first came out in the 2016-ish time, I don't know if that's when it came out. That's when I first learned about it. I didn't really like it that much. I don't know. I didn't think it was that great. It wasn't that exciting to me, but tons of people enjoyed it. So I was like, well, we need to figure out how to do this because it's clearly a consumer desire. Over time, I've come to like it more. Obviously, the type of bean matters, and the way there's still elements to improve it with quality. But I have always preferred to brew it hot and then, in a way, flash chill it or quickly make it cool. And in my experience, I do taste, I feel like a lot more flavor when I do it that way. And I've heard that before, but I have no scientific proof. And that's kind of what I want to ask you is, your method is cold the whole time, and it seems like it still can produce a lot of really high quality flavors. But I've always heard that you need that high temperature to get some of the acidity or to get some of the clarity. But it seems like that's not true. What's your experience with that?
Well, it is not true. I mean, if you compared flash brewing, right? So you make a batch brew and then you cool it down instantly, right? Versus traditional immersion brewing, cold, then there will be a massive gap because immersion as an extraction method is more, I would say, gentle than the percolation, which is what we use when we do batch brewer, right? So the water percolates through the coffee, right? So that itself, it makes a difference in the extraction efficiency in time. Plus, if you add high temperature, then no wonder that your hot brew, instantly chilled, will be more extracted than your cold brew sitting there for many, many hours without any agitation or nothing. Plus, that's what I said, oxidation. You take your big bucket of cold brew, you pour your water over your coffee beans, and you let it there. You let it sit, and the oxygen does its job. It's spoiling your product. Microbes start growing in your product. You might not be able to see it, but they are there. Like 2 days ago, last Tuesday, me and my partner Chris, together with Damien from Urnex, we did a webinar on microbial safety when you make a cold brew, and we were sharing all the details from our studies on what nasty things can be present in your cold brew if you do it traditional way. So this is why you didn't like it. This is why we didn't like it. So the approach for hardening is completely different. We still use cold water, but we recirculate that water under pressure through the coffee bed that is inside of the extraction basket. So basically, you have a basket full of ground coffee, and then through the middle of it, there is a piston that pushes out the water outside, a little bit like in mocha pot or espresso machine. But what happens later, we suck it back again and we recirculate it through the coffee bed again and again and again, multiple times per minute, right? So this is why we can get this efficiency of extraction, which you can't get with traditional cold brew. And we reach easily 20 to 23% of extraction yield, which is completely the same as it is for hot brew. But because of the lower temperature, we do not break down antioxidants, in example. We do extract slightly different organic acids. We do extract more caffeine because of that pressure. So the overall taste profile will be slightly different, although I have to say, and I perceive it as a good thing, it will be more into cold batch brew rather than traditional cold brew. I even had a big customer once who makes cold brew traditional way out of, let's say, a mediocratic quality beans, and they started to test cold brew out of hard tank, and they said like, well guys, this is great, but our coffee now doesn't taste with oxidation, and our clients got used to it, so it ain't gonna use it because it would taste completely different. We know it's better, but it will be shocking difference for them, so we can't just change it.
Oh man. Even though it's
Luckily it
better,
was
can't
just one
yeah,
case.
need it to stay the same apparently. Well, that's fascinating. It sounds like at least a component of it is really more about the time, like the time that it's sitting there and the oxidation and the amount of flavor you're losing and maybe some of the off-putting flavors that you're gaining depending on the environment it's sitting in. It sounds like that's a bigger factor here when it comes to good quality and good flavors. So next with hard tank, you're manufacturing all these machines. Actually, about rough estimate, how many machines are you manufacturing a year, or have you manufactured in the past?
Well, it's not that all that easy to count it anymore because we manufacture baby hard tanks in two locations. One is in our facility, and the second one is in the United States. So we do have a partner with whom we teamed up, and they build baby hard tanks under our license. The company is Fatco, very well known batch brewers manufacturer. So they produce it for the mostly American market, but also exporting, and we produce it ourselves. So when it comes to our numbers, we roughly sell around 300 units a year, which, for us, it's never enough. But when you think of where we were starting 5 years ago, there is no VC behind us. There were no financing rounds, no crowdfunding. We did it all organically out of our own resources. I find it quite nice, but obviously, back again to the competitive spirit, we are aiming for much more than 300 units each year.
Oh, that is incredible without outside funding, right? And backing. I mean, that's to really just build it from the ground up to get to that is incredible. And I'm so glad you said this because you pretty much segued perfectly into kind of my question here, because I saw that you partner with Fetco in the United States. And from my limited understanding of manufacturing, normally someone manufactures it themselves and then they give it to distributors in these various countries and various places who do the rest of the work to sell it and get it to the final buyer. But I find that this partnership, it seems really unique. I don't know if I've ever heard of something like this. Maybe it's more common than I know, but you're actually allowing another manufacturer in the US to manufacture your product. So I guess help me understand, is that normal? Is that not normal? And then how's that partnership worked out for you?
Well, that's a good question again. I haven't thought all that much whether it is normal or not. Well, for sure, it was a big step for us, right? When we were approached by Fatco, which is a company existing on the market for like 35 plus years, established, by the way, by Polish guys. So
Oh, really? I did not
well,
know that. We use
yeah,
Fetco a lot. I didn't realize that it was from
yes.
some Polish people.
Yeah, Polish people. So we still talk to the founder and the CEO, Chris, in Polish when we meet each other. But I don't think that was a reason. Or maybe it was. I don't know. Anyway, they approach us, and they have, which is also quite fascinating to me, they have a completely different business strategy and behavior because of their heritage. So they do everything, well thought, slower, analyzed. They are patient, right? Whereas us, we make decisions fast. We do everything all at once. We need results now. We change strategy every 5 minutes if necessary. So it's like two different worlds because we are a just tiny little startup and they are a big, well-established company. So we learn from them big time. And I think they also might learn a bit from us. And that was also one of the reasons they decided to expand their portfolio of products because I think they realized that producing batch brewers for another decade will not be enough to be competitive, right? So they wanted to have something that nobody else had in their portfolio. And we started first conversations like 5 years ago. So it wasn't like, overnight success. And we decided that it's going to be better for them and for us that Fatco manufactures baby hard tank in the US because this is the biggest cold brew market in the world. Those machines are NSF certified. There is no hassle with shipping, customs, especially now, no tariffs, no nothing. They have huge distribution network across the US and also around the world. So, and again, it was a bit of an unknown for everybody, right? We didn't know whatever's gonna happen. They didn't know us. For them, we were just a bunch of guys from garage again. So it was also, I think, quite of a risk from Fatco's end to trust in what we're doing and to take the risk. So we are a speedboat and they are a big cruise ship. I would compare it that way. But somehow we can just go into one direction together.
Hmm. Well, that's incredible to hear. And we partner with Fetco. We purchase from them pretty frequently for our batch brewers, for some grinders, and they're a phenomenal company. I mean, what's always stood out to me is just the longevity, the excellence, the quality, the
Exactly.
programmability. I mean, you really can fine tune coffees with an automated machine. So that's really impressive. So it's amazing to hear. It sounds like an incredible connection. So fun to hear about the hard tank. So now let's move on to the final or the most recent iteration of your business model, ready to drink. You were talking about how you're now canning, bottling, co-packing. You are providing ready to drink cold brew beverages. So how did that come about? Why pivot to that sector?
Well, huh, um, that's actually maybe a funny story or interesting story. Well, it started in my head back in 2020 during COVID pandemic time. I was back then working at some other company where I was managing a chain of coffee shops, and we wanted to find a co-packer to produce cold brew for us in bottles on our custom formula that it would be pasteurized and up to our standard. And I failed to find a proper co-packer, and then I was like, well, I have it in front of my eyes. I was back then an employee of of HardBeans. I was responsible for technology consultancy. So I've called one of the founders, now my business partner, and I told him, "Hey, Marcin, listen, I have this idea. I draw a quick business plan on how we can make a small cold brew bottling facility. I have it all figured out. You have the technology that I need to brew that cold brew. It's going to cost us about $150,000. I'm going to bring that cash and we're going to become business partners." And he was like, "Let me think about it." All right. So, a couple months later, he calls me. I already forgot about the conversation. And he's like, "You remember your idea about that cold brew bottling business that we were supposed to do together?" And I said, "Yeah, sure." "Well, I thought about it. I slightly tuned it. Let's talk." So we meet up, we talk, and then out of a sudden, it becomes $1 million investment. We don't do bottling anymore. We are about to do canning, and we got all pumped. And he's like, "All right, so what? You wanna start doing it?" And I'm like, "Yeah." So I quit my job. I jumped into HardBeans and started to build this project. Overall, after a year and a half of investment, it became 2 million euros of investment instead of one. Um, but we did so. We've managed, and now we operate in I don't know, about 30 or 40 countries with our RTD products. It's the fastest growing part of our business, but also the most difficult one when it comes to the production. Um, but each of our businesses has different difficulties and challenges. So we basically run like three different companies, I can say, operating in completely different markets as well. Because roasted coffee, we only sell it in Poland, basically. Machines, we sell it globally, over 80 countries around the world. But it's difficult to sell these machines for multiple reasons. Whereas beverages, it's a bit easier to sell it, but we mostly sell them in Europe and Middle East and a little bit to States because of the logistics limitations, right? And the cost applying to transporting water across the ocean. But it's much more difficult in the production chain. It's incredibly more complex than roasting coffee. It's just like a kindergarten and PhD, really. There is no space for mistakes, really, because if you roast 20 batches of coffee per day, same coffee, and if you just make a mistake in one batch, worst case scenario, you're just gonna throw it away, or you're gonna blend it with all the other batches. Nobody will notice, right? Depending on your business approach. But if you make a batch of cold brew and you make one little mistake, the whole batch is spoiled, and you just have to drain like 2,000 liters of cold brew, right?
Ooh.
Or if you can it and you make 10,000 cans out of it, and then it turns out that you've made a little mistake that caused contamination, done. You're just fried, right? So the level of complexity, the level of responsibility, and the margin of error,
Hmm.
like completely different game. But we decided to do it because we wanted to diversify our business. So we did so with hot and equipment. We did so with ready to drink beverages. And now we see that despite being extremely difficult, almost bankrupting multiple times, we survived, we sustained, and we grow. And now, at the all-time high of C market times, we have three legs instead of just one. And that's, I believe, long term is a proper strategy, although it's extremely draining your nerves and your bodies, because like I said, it's a high risk business. When you build three facilities in 5 years, not having any VCs and a cash pillow that you're sitting on.
Absolutely. Boy, diversification brings its benefits, but like you just said, each one has its own challenge. So you have to experience the challenge of each one daily, right? I mean, it's always coming up, all the various things. And it's so fascinating to hear about the margin of error on the canning side. And that's probably why so few people actually get into it, right? Because it is that challenging, and to
Now I
scale
know.
it. Now you
Now
know.
I know.
For anyone looking to get into it, you may want to talk with Maciej first. Okay, so then with the RTD, what's the primary product? Is it just cold brew, canned lattes? What's the main product?
So we are a private label manufacturer most of the time. We offer I would say two paths in which we can work. The first one is what I call one-stop shop. So we offer a portfolio of products. It's a black cold brew, it's oat latte, caramel oat latte, a low sugar lattes, hibiscus tea, iced tea, tonic cold brew. We have plenty of formulas in our portfolio that you can just take off the shelf, wrap it with your own branding. I mean, we're going to wrap it with your branding, and that's it. So basically, a fast track, you get a box of samples, you decide you want us to produce this and this and that, you design your label on the provided template, and we're going to just do everything for you. But if you want us to produce a custom formula, let's say with your beans in it, right, or whatever else it is, we can also do it, and we do it all the time. So basically, we're gonna start with the formulation stage first. You're gonna brief us, you're gonna send us your material, we're gonna start making a lot of samples, ship them to you, get your feedback, redo the samples, ship them back over to you, get your feedback, finalize the product, examine it in the lab, perform rapid shelf life tests, and once it's all signed off, you are the owner of the formula, and you can, or you don't have to, produce it with us or with someone else. That's basically what we do, but we don't limit ourselves just to coffee. We produce coffee with functional ingredients, vitamins, minerals, L-theanine, adaptogens, other nootropics. We produce tea with MCT oil. We produce coffees with adaptogens like ashwagandha, whatever. We've been producing sodas, energetic drinks sometimes. So there's plenty. There's plenty of different products that we've been asked to produce, and we do so. Yeah, but majority of them, of course, it's still coffee.
All right. So we've heard about a couple iterations of HardBeans evolution and diversification and growth and an incredible story. You mentioned fuels, but I'll just put it in your court. What is next for Hard Tank? Is that the big focus? Is there some other big dream you're chasing? What's next? I'm sorry, for HardBeans, not Hard Tank.
Yeah. Well, in terms of the technology and further R&D projects, we do have a new technology that we've already developed, but we still wait until we fully implement it commercially. It's the double coffee grounds recycling technology. So when we started the canning business, we realized that we generate a lot of coffee grounds, which was a waste, right? And it is a waste, 99 out of 10 out of 100 times for everybody in the industry. So we've developed the technology to first extract chemical compounds out of those grounds. Those are ingredients for cosmetics industry like coffee oil, caffeine, and all sorts of different precious ingredients that have high value. And once you do so, you can sell those for cosmetic manufacturers. And once you do so, you then recycle those coffee grounds again, because you can use them as a source of sustainable energy. So you can create a biogas out of those coffee grounds. And then that gas is then used to powerize your coffee roaster, or in our case, to powerize our pasteurizer. So this is something that will be a next big thing for us in the future, but we still have to make a few or finalize a few more projects in hard tank. So for hard tank, so cold brew basically is our core driver of growth and core driver of business. And we have plenty of projects such as bag in boxes to be added to our portfolio. An example, in a couple of months from now, we're gonna launch the new hardware product that will become a set with hard tank. So this is also something that we've been working on for quite some time right now. And the last year or so, and this year and the year after, probably, it's also a time in which we realize that we've been only focusing on delivering great products and great technology, but we failed to develop our selling and marketing skills, which also require investment. You can spend any money on building nice shiny factory, but if you don't have selling process, if you don't have a competent team, if you don't know nothing about marketing, SEO, website building, etc., buyer personas, all that kind of stuff that goes in the background, nobody's going to buy it basically. So we last 2 years or a year and a half, this year and probably the next year, so 3 years in total, over is going to be or is being a time in which we invest heavily into our sales and marketing processes. It's an investment like any other product or factory, but we didn't know that back at the time as a bunch of guys from garage.
Absolutely. I call that I've heard that called the rainmaker's dilemma. When people start a business, they are the primary sales arm because usually people start a business, they're passionate about it, they know the product or they know the service, they're passionate about it, and they will sell it. And so many other things can scale and you can build SOPs and delegate and processes, but that's usually one of the last ones that gets established as a process because it's so hard to let go of that and it's so hard to think about it in terms of processes outside of I'm going to go make sure that this thing sells. And so it's going from being a rainmaker to being an architect and creating those systems for your business. And I experienced that in our own business, right? On the wholesale side, I still struggle with, feel the need that I need to jump in and really push these sales instead of thinking, you know what, how do we create better processes and systems? So Maciej, you and your team are true innovators, true entrepreneurs. I'm incredibly inspired by your story, and I'm sure many of our listeners are as well. So thank you so much for being on the show today.
Philip, thank you so much for having me. It was a true pleasure. I appreciate early wake up on your end, given the time zone difference, and I really enjoyed it. Looking forward to maybe doing another episode sometime in the future together. That was a pleasure.
Absolutely. Well, I would love it. I appreciate it. And to all of our listeners, it is cold brew season. We do have our new cold brew blend that is out. Maybe you need to get a little baby hard tank and brew it that way. Maybe you want to go with the traditional route or brew it hot and then chill it. However you want to drink it, we're really pleased with our new cold brew blend. And for all of our club subscribers, you'll actually get a little Alto bag setup so you can make cold brew at home on your own. And then the only other thing I want to make sure I share with our listeners is that we have a brand new product. And Maciej, I maybe should talk with you about RTD at some point. But we have a brand new
Definitely.
canned coffee product that we have released called Sun Chaser. And it's actually coffee mixed with lemonade. And specifically, it's our Colombian collab lot that we get through an organization called Unblended. It is phenomenal. It's refreshing. It's zingy. It's absolutely delicious. And so I really encourage our local listeners to go check that out. It's available in our shops and online. As always, thank you all listeners for tuning in. I'm your host, Philip Klayman, and thank you for helping us cultivate freedom.